welcome to another episode of 2-on-1 with Mike and Mike. I'm your host, Michael Vetrano, along with my partner in crime, Michael Torriero. Today's guest is the pride of Hoover High, the pride of the state of Washington. He was a three-time state champion. That's Brian Shute, also known as Frank Jasper. How are you?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good.
Doing great.
So we're super excited to have you. We talked a little bit about off air. I know you know this, but you're a bit of a cult hero in the wrestling world. I know that you're coming up on a 36th anniversary of your work in Vision Quest. So I think that's exciting in terms of timing. But, obviously there's a number of things that we want to talk to you about. But I want to kind of go back in time and have a little bit of fun and talk to you about your match, if you will, during the movie. So
if you don't mind, I'm gonna interject and just I need to bring you, Frank, and the audience members in the back that my youngest brother, I love him to death. He's a Dungeons and Dragons guy, so he goes into a fantasy world, make believe. So we're gonna go into Mike's fantasy world, make believe, and we're all gonna get into the bubble of 1986 maybe, and we're gonna.
It was 1985, but anyway.
85. My apologies. My apologies.
Well, the beauty of it is we can edit anything out. So anyway, so you were a Brian Shute. You were a three-time state champ. So going into that match with Louden Swain, right? You interacted. What's interesting about the movie is you interacted with him. I think that the famous scene, right, or that when you were training, I think it was either at Washington State with the log, and I think he came to watch you train. I've read some stories about that. I think that you actually took possession about that. Like, tell us about, that's a famous scene, right? Tell us about that. When you were in the, you were certainly, filming the movie.
Not in the movie. When you were training, yeah. Shoot. So what was it like? You know that Swain's going over there. You're not expecting that anybody is, you're an athlete that's there to win. You're not expecting any crowd. You have your apparatus that your father, brought in the pickup truck to the arena for you to be able to go up and down the steps. You're there, solely focused in your head, and now your competitor, the guy that's, antagonizing you, shows up to your training. What's going through your head at this point with a log in your head? Do you just want to put it through him like, a last fatality?
So, hey, listen, that's kind of strange. I find somebody showing up with his buddy like he needs backup, right?
Right.
And then, trying to like throw me off my training. Of course, I just stayed focused. To me, he was just another guy coming after me,
Well, listen, you were a three-time returning state champ. He definitely, he definitely needed
Mike,
backup.
what were the accolades? Give me more of the accolades, because I know that Matty D, the best in the biz in data and research, has given you some accolade. Yeah.
Yeah, I do know. First of all, there was a book. And all joking aside, there was a book written, there was a movie written, but certainly in the movie, you were a three-time undefeated state champ. As an upperweight. So that's incredible. You don't see that at that weight class, right? So going into the match, it was your senior year. You were looking for to repeat as a four-time state champ, and then you had this kind of upstart. It was a new, really kind of new to the sport, in Louden Swain, who jumped down a couple weight classes. I think he was a state qualifier the year before, and now he's down in your weight class, and you have him showing up at your training regiments at when you up and down the stairs at the stadium at either Washington or Washington State. Then we find out, I believe he went to a match of his where he wasn't able to. I think you said you can't hold your mud, right? Because he kept having nosebleeds, right? So this guy was
a bleeder.
Yeah, he was a bleeder, right? So to me, he was afraid of you, right? So I want to get right into the match, all right? So it's match day. Louden finally, makes that downward descent. I want to talk to you about cutting weight too, right? And if you recall, right, and some people believe it, I'm one of them, that time was up for Louden Swain, right? Was he going to make weight? Was he not going to make weight?
You're saying that he did not make weight?
I don't think that he actually made weight. I think that Brian Shute actually should have won the match, because if you recall that you recall in the weigh-in time, the weigh-in process, you guys had weighed in and they went to the back and they looking around for Louden, and time was up. So that's kind of a start. I think he got gypped right there. I don't even think he should have been able to participate in the match, right? And then we get into the match, and which we you know, in the first period, I think, you know, Michael, you've looked at it too. I think you had him pinned in the first period, right? I think that you had him, you know, pinned in the first period of the match. I don't know if have you watched? It must be painful and difficult. Have you watched any reruns of the match?
You know, I haven't looked at anything recently, but you know, there was a couple of times where I thought the match was over. You know, but you know, the ref wasn't going along with it, man. He had some other kind of game plan on, and you know, who knows? You know, maybe he was from Thompson High, as far as I know. I don't know.
Well, listen, you know, your coach is at, you know, that's another thing, and then we don't have to bring up any more painful memories. But look, okay. Mike and I talked about this off the air and in the promo, right? As Mike and I both coached in the past, right? So look, you were up on points, 3 or 4 points. I think there was a little bit of a discrepancy. I think that maybe it was a little bit, you know, your coach over at Hoover High maybe should have, you know, had you more of a defensive stance, you know, in terms of, you know, you were kind of locking up with them and you gave him an opportunity for that.
The Metzger, he could have went, he could have went Metzger there.
Yeah.
There was just a lot of things where
it
falls
circled.
on the coach, falls on the coach that, you know, the strategy is not to push in. If you are going to push in, try to get that hand into the thigh, palm up for that Metzger. And it just seemed like it definitely wasn't a brain fart, because we followed your career since, and you're doing amazing things. So, you know, again, we don't want to blame you, but we want to put some onus on the coach. God rest his soul. If he was around, we'd have a conversation with him. But, you know, maybe the strategy and the techniques weren't really translated into the practice room. Right. So before we get into post, I just want to say, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's like, so when I look back on that, the thing that the coach really should have kind of given me, like, hey, man, he's swinging his head, he's swinging over the top of you. That's like game one. That's it, man. Dog, you know, double blast. Now blast double right there. Throw him to his back. He's going to do that again when he's coming up, swing his arm around. Just look for that, man. That would be the simple thing for me to just be hitting on.
Yeah,
that's what I really feel like I should have hit.
Exactly.
Well, you've been coaching now too. Now in this second part of your life, so you know, I'm sure that you know, I know for me and I know for Mike, you know, we have these big gaping holes in our hearts for wins that could have came and girls that we should have married. And you know, it definitely translates into making youth get motivated on the idea of winning. So, you know, I do know that the loss has propelled you into superstardom, you know, in the wrestling sphere and on the coaching circuit. So, you know, it's a little bit unfortunate that, again, you know, if you were your own coach, we don't think that we'd be, you know, cheering on Louden Swain right now. We think that it'd be, you know, Brian Shute as, you know, the main character, if you will.
And just remember, that was just a dual meet, and you know, it was something that would have shot me right to the, you know, core, like to lose a match this close to, you know, state, and double down, get ready for action, never let anybody score a point. You know, I'd be trying to do a pull of Dan Gable, right? One match.
Look,
go to the Olympics, you don't let anybody score on you, right?
Exactly.
Like, that's champion.
I just want to say, we could set the record straight. I don't believe that Louden made weight. I think that he was not eligible. I think that the ref played it. We've broke down the scoring. I think that you were up on, you know, 3 or 4 points, and I don't think the scoreboard depicted it. I think that you had a takedown early on. I think you had a pin in the first period. So in my heart, you were the victor. And like Mike said, we appreciate everything you've done from there.
Well, look, you've gotten it off your chest, Mike. You can, you know, there's a couple more things that you need to do as far as your bucket list.
Sure.
You know, let's get into some more important things in terms of, you know, what, you know, Mr. Jasper is doing now, and how, you know, what he's doing now translates back into our sport. So snap, we're out of fantasy land. That was a lot of fun. You know, I'm going to go and play with my coloring book later on. Also, I'll take.
Well, you do that. You might. You do that anyway. So I know he projects a lot of things. But anyway, that was a lot of fun. Frank, I know you're doing a lot of great things. All joking aside, the 36th anniversary of the show's coming up. I know that you have a lot of apparel. I believe you have your own podcast. You're extremely into nutrition and weight loss. So I kind of want to give us an update. What's Brian Shute doing now, also known as Frank Jasper? What are you currently doing now?
Well, I recently moved. You know, my wife and I relocated to Carmel, California, and we were, you know, I had a clinic for the last 25 plus years in Pacific Palisades. So I've done a deep dive into, you know, Oriental medicine, but also, you know, continue with my sports aspect of that. I mean, I study any kind of acupuncture related to sports. I study, you know, the fascia release techniques, the craniosacral And, you know, and this basically, I'm really deep into the clinic nutrition because I think that can make up such a difference for these athletes. As a matter of fact, I'm currently working with an NCAA national champion that's getting ready for the Olympics. He's getting ready to get, you know, to go for the trials. He's been killing it. He went over to Nice and won his weight division. So I like working with these kind of highly motivated. And one of the things that's really cool about the athlete that level, they're like Lamborghini. You just give them something, and boy, they know it. Like, oh, that triggered, that fired, that lit me up, that gave me an extra juice, that helps me recover, all of that. So you get that instantaneous feedback. They're highly motivated. So I love working with these types of individuals. But I've moved to Carmel. I do a online podcast called Cutting Edge Nutrition with Shute. I do that once a week. My goal, of course, is to bring into, you know, the wrestling community just better awareness about how to eat, if you are going to cut weight, there is a healthy way to do it. Maybe you know, don't know. I dropped 25 pounds in 2.5 weeks to shoot Vision Quest. I stayed at that weight. It was at 4% body fat. As you know, 7% is the most you can go down to before they won't let you wrestle. So I wasn't in a healthy place, but I know how to do that. I know how to do it wrong. And I've studied for years and years to learn how to do it right. Yeah, I mean, what did you guys experience when you were younger? They just said, just don't eat, right?
Pretty much. I think.
What is wrong with that concept?
Well, we had
starve yourself, you're going to dehydrate yourself, you're going to over-exercise, and you're going to be ready for wrestling in a tournament?
That's right. We tell the kids all the time. It's, you know, and maybe not the kids. You know, sometimes it's the parent, but you know, you have a young plant. You know, you're not going to take a plant and pull it out of the sunlight, not give it water. You know, and you can't expect a young person between the prepubescent ages of 12 and, you know, 18 to not be able to have water, food, to be able to grow. You can't get strong that way. And, you know, it's not a sport of weight cutting. It's a sport of wrestling. And, you know, anytime that you're taking your focus away from the techniques and the strategies of winning on the mat, and you're focused on weight cutting more, you know, that's problematic. And then the last part is, I know that what separates wrestlers is, in fact, you know, sacrificing, you know, food and water and doing a thing that nobody else would really be willing to do. I think that's what separates us from a lot of other people. But I do believe there's a fine line between being tough and being smart and being, you know, tough and stupid, maybe.
Yeah, and just to elaborate on that, and all joking aside, you know, I do want to get into that from a real life perspective, right? So there's a lot of rules and protocols in place, you know, certainly from the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s. So now, right, there's a lot more process and procedure. But just, you know, for our audience, walk us through. You were like 210 pounds or 220 pounds. You know, where were you at when you kind of first started the role versus where were you when you were Brian Shute?
So, you know, when I got cast in the role, I was bodybuilding. I was preparing for a bodybuilding event. I was an athletic trainer at Eastern Washington, so that's where my athletic training comes into, you know, play.
And you read you read for the script in the local classified. Someone gave you a call. How did you hear about the actual?
No, I was the athletic trainer for the wrestling team for that semester. And one of the guys that was in the movie already as an extra came in because he wasn't wrestling that semester at Eastern Washington University, and was just outside of Spokane. They filmed almost all of this in Spokane. Joe Albee Stadium was where the scene was with the log, and all the schools where all the, you know, local schools were being, that's where they shot all those parts as well. And so I'm just sitting in the wrestling room reading my, you know, my book, my text, getting ready for another, you know, exam. And this guy walked in and said, you know, hey, I'm in this movie and it's, you know, it's really cool. They're paying me to wrestle. How cool is that? You know, and by the way, they're still looking for somebody about 6 foot tall, muscular build that can wrestle. That's you.
That's you.
And so that started the whole thing rolling. And I had 5 different auditions to do it. And then I got cast. I actually had to wrestle a guy from Los Angeles area because the producers brought a guy up that they really liked. Nancy Klopper was the casting.
So like director. a real life Kumite for this role.
Well,
you had to.
There were no bare knuckles.
Blood's in, blood out, Mike. That's what they say on the street.
Right. So what were you, just to get back to the question, what did you weigh though? You were like 220, and then you had when you actually kind of shot that scene, where were we at kind of weight wise?
So I was at 215 when I was cast. And
Okay.
then 2.5 weeks later, I was down to 189 pounds. And I stayed at 189 at 4% body fat for 10 weeks. We shot for 10 weeks. Then I went back to school.
Right.
I got back into bodybuilding and I shot back up. And then 3 months later, I got a call. Oh, yeah, one more scene to do. I'm like, well, hey, okay. I was at 217. So I had a month that time to drop. So I dropped that weight in 30 days, came and shot. That was actually the weigh-in scene.
Oh, there you go. You see?
And so if you look at Matthew, you'll see like his collarbones are sticking up because they called him back. Now, the ironic thing was I was doing everything personally what that Matthew's character was doing in
That's
the
what I was
movie.
getting to. Yeah, it was kind of an opposite.
He was totally eating as much as he could, and he had a nutritionist on the set, and he had a guy that's training him, and he was working out, man. So he was just trying to bulk up, and I was trying to suck down.
Right.
So we would get right down to at least somewhere close,
Were you wearing rubber suits, throughout were you doing things like wearing a rubber suit, 15 days out, and pulling the water out of you and doing those silly type of things? Or were you a little bit more scientific because of your background?
How did you make the weight? Yeah.
I just starved myself. So here's the difference. Bodybuilding, I have to really force. I have to eat. I have to force myself. I would have 12 eggs a day, and I would start out with 6 eggs in the morning. I would carry hard-boiled eggs in my pockets throughout the day and be eating those. When I would sit down to dinner, I would eat it. I would eat at the Commons at the University of Eastern Washington, and you could eat as much as you want. So I would eat 5 platefuls of food every night. And so I did that breakfast, lunch, dinner. And so what I went down to was like, I had egg whites for breakfast. I had a salad with some tuna and a squeeze of lemon for lunch. And then I got in on an exercise cycle with wearing my sweats, not the rubber suit, but just sweats. And I pedaled for an hour. And I went from 5 meals, 5 platefuls down to just nothing for dinner and just only 2 meals, just really kept it thin. Still not the best way, too fast, too hard, the whole thing. I was getting lightheaded. I got a bloody nose. It wouldn't stop. They had to cauterize it during the filming. So everything that he was going through.
I was going to say, it's the opposite. You couldn't hold your mud, shoot.
I couldn't. Took some good drugs to cauterize that.
Did you? Listen, I have all kinds of questions about Madonna and Carla, but we'll talk about that off air. This is a PG podcast. But all joking aside, I know that you're like
Mike. Can you say all joking aside one more time, please, for the?
Well, but every time I look at you, I think of joke. But anyway, so what I know that your likeness, right? As we talk about the 36th anniversary, right? Some of the things I've seen, some of the apparel in Hoover High. I think you brought some of that, right, to talk about.
Yeah, so I mean, you can go to my site, and I will be doing a little bit of a 36th anniversary, special. I'm going to discount everything 20% starting on February 15th, going for 2 weeks. So go to Shute, SHUTE, shirts.com. That's where all my apparel, that's where the retro shirts are. And I have retro singlets. I have the Hoover singlet. I have the Thompson singlet. I have a couple of Thompson jackets. It looks something like that back there. But just specific sizes. I'm kind of selling out of those, trying to move on.
Sure.
I'm getting ready to open a whole new collection with a company that I'm working with now. That'll drop.
Let's talk about them a little bit, because they're a famous family here on Long Island, and we think a whole ton of the guys over at Combative Edge, and you couldn't be with a better group of fellas. So talk a little bit about what you're doing with those guys over there, and how you're going to have Shute shirts, and then you're going to have a whole line of stuff kind of with them. Is that correct?
Well, I'm going to do a hoodie, and it's going to be a Matt Monster hoodie. It's going to be a Matt Monster top and bottom for fight shorts. And then what else? Well, we got the jersey over there, and a couple of other like throwback singlets that they did. So there's a few things that's coming down for them. But my biggest thing I'm looking forward is a nice hoodie, because I just love wearing something on my head as well as my shoulders that especially since it's colder in Northern California than it was in Southern California.
Yeah, what's the weather like? We're I'm in New York. Michael's in Detroit. It was a bit cold today in New York. So what's the weather like? Make us jealous.
I wish I could, but it got overcast and it's starting to rain. So now it's raining. Yesterday, sunny. Yesterday was sunny. Last Saturday, I played tennis. That's my form of exercise on the weekends. It was absolutely sunny. I actually got a little bit of a suntan on my neck because it was so nice out here. But we're outside playing outdoors almost every weekend. So really hard to beat that.
So that's what I did want to speak to you a little bit about. I mean, you were a very competitive tennis player as a young kid. You had a scholarship. You went to college for a short bit and played on the team, and then you went out and you became an iron worker, which is, you know, one of the toughest jobs in the world. I come from a blue collar town, so shout out to all of my, you know, the cohort of guys that I graduated with. They had a couple of guys, Mike. In case you didn't know, there was a show on the Discovery Channel called Iron Men, and it was a bunch of guys from my high school who were iron workers in New York City. So, you know, I think a lot about just taking that on as a person is, it takes a lot of courage. So now you're playing tennis. So I want to go back to you playing tennis and also wrestling. So what would you say that, you know, is, for me, the only form of exercise that I really ever enjoyed was wrestling. You know, I'm good at running. I'm good at soccer. I shouldn't say that I'm good at soccer, but, you know, I don't have two left feet in soccer. You know, I can kick with both feet, and I played in high school. But, you know, what about tennis is it, or what other cross sports do you think that wrestlers could be taking up, you know, aside from just banging each other in the head and smashing around?
Well, you know, of course, you know, jiu-jitsu would be a great adjunct. I know that it's counterintuitive. They go to their back, but man, they learn a lot of great techniques, a lot of riding techniques, great leg riding. That one's great. I mean, if you want to just talk about pure kinesthetic awareness, then gymnastics got to be number one. Then wrestling is going to be like the second. That it will give you that kind of awareness, you know, in space and time. I love tennis because it's explosive. It's short bursts. I have to, you know, I can run. I get bored at running. I'd much rather chase something down, smack the shit out of it, and make my opponent run really hard. And, you know, kind of wear him down, beat him up that way. Well, so it's a little different kind of a battle, but it's a battle just the same. And then when you get into wrestling, it's at a certain point in time, it's all about what's up between the ears here, how long you're going to last, what you're going to do, how quickly you're going to respond. It's not just, you know, everybody has some technique. Everybody's got some strength. Everybody's been wrestling for a while. So the real big thing is, how do you handle stress? How do you push through adversity when you feel tired, your body feels tired, and you just got to go, I just cannot stop. I just got to keep going. And tennis, I get the same thing when I'm playing tournaments. And I did that for a period of time. Now I'm just kind of doing it to stay in shape. And then I just kind of stay light with my weights now, because I did all that heavy lifting when I was young. So all of that's there. So as you're older, you just need to maintain. So now it's just about light weights, higher reps, focused workouts, you know, functional, you know, workouts as well.
So you come from, by the way, you come from a martial art family, right? I think your dad was big into martial arts. You were into martial arts. Tell us a little bit about that.
Judoka, right? Is that what they say? A judoka?
Third or fourth grade is when we started a dojo. My dad was a black belt. He learned his judo in Japan while he was in the military. And boy, he got a lesson, because, you know, their gaijins, or the white boys over there, were few and far. Very few of them would ever go into the, you know, the dojos there. And if they did, then the Japanese really wanted to show them how tough judo was. So my dad learned it from one of the toughest places you could learn it, was right in Japan. And then he taught us, and that has a lot of, actually, that's also a good, you know, martial art, because of the throwing, because of the groundwork you do, some of the holds, very close to what you do in wrestling as well. So, yeah. And then I've always been interested in martial arts, Kempo karate. I took karate throughout my entire life. I studied with different people. I did kickboxing. I actually was training one of the heavyweight kickboxers, BKA, out at Benny the Jet Center. I would train him at Gold's Gym in LA, and then he would take me out to the Benny the Jet Center and train me, beat the crap out of me there, just laugh. But I loved it. I loved the battle. I loved the work, their training. And I also then started taking Aikido, and my friend and I started up together and went through, and we both got black belts. And so that it's a beautiful art. I love it.
So yeah, Aikido. So I did Aikido a little bit with a guy, and it's a lot of hip position and pressure release in momentum, grabbing and fighting close distance. Is that sort of kind of like stepping momentum, making sure that you're pulling the right way? Talk a little bit about it.
Ishiba, the man that created it, the small guy, he had a very wide range of understanding of different martial arts. And he wanted to create a martial art that it didn't matter if you were tall or short, that you could handle any attacker, whether they're big or small. And so it uses really nice footwork, and you use their momentum, their speed, their power to use to throw them. And then there's all the joint locks that you use, so it's like a block, a swipe, grab, swinging around. And then, so it's all very fluid. It's very circular. I studied the Nishio system, which is, there were 5 that came out of Ishiba, and the Nishio system is a lot more about footwork. And it's just incredible. It's just like, it's almost like a dance and a fluidity.
Yeah, it was. Mike, have you ever done any sort of Aikido?
No, I dabbled in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and obviously wrestling. Those are my
Aikido. When he was talking about the footwork, it's very, very interesting when you get the right teacher and you get the movements. It is like dance, like capoeira in that regard. You have to have a partner to be able to play with and dance with. And I found that when I was playing it, I did find a lot of the throws that you're seeing today, where a reverse arm throw, where you're kind of throwing it the wrong way, might be an Aikido throw where someone's punching and I'm turning into it to be able to get some momentum. But I had a lot of fun playing with it, and it opened up a whole sphere of attacking and counterattacking that I didn't know about. So really interesting.
Not only are you a 3-time state champ, you're a black belt, and so you're one tough guy. Shute was one tough guy.
You want the best of high school wrestling? Long Island Wrestling Association's website brings you the best. Wrestling is one of the toughest blue-collar sports. The sport has tens of thousands of followers, and at the center of it all is the Long Island Wrestling Association, measuring the gravity of the sport. In 2002, National Hall of Fame wrestling inductee Steve Meehan created the #1 source for wrestling news in New York State. With contributors like Long Island Sports Hall of Fame inductee and historian Andy Slauson, the site is the most comprehensive wrestling website in the country for high school wrestling news. With in-depth analysis, entertaining facts, forums, and trending topics, this site has a treasure trove of historic high school wrestling information, with records dating back to the 1930s. There is no better source for high school wrestling coverage. Long Island Wrestling Association, keeping the wrestling world up to speed.
Again, we do appreciate your time. I know we had some fun, but you are a legend in the sport, and I know you've done obviously a lot in your life, and you're an impressive guy. And Frank, aka Brian Shute, we do appreciate your time with us, and we look forward to you, all the different endeavors that you're on, and I know that you're continuing to support the sport, and you're someone again that's revered, and we appreciate you.
It's an honor. It's an honor and a privilege. The movie has done so much for me, and it's helped many people and throughout their lives, become more motivated and help them through tough situations. A lot of them, like yourself, watched it as a kid, wrestled through high school, wrestled through college, came back and started coaching. And so it's to have a positive message out there, to have people that's now 4th generation that it's impacting. I couldn't ask for more, I'm loving it.
Well, we're certainly glad you took the opportunity and played the role. And again, you definitely inspired a lot of folks. Thank you.
Frank, thanks a lot, man. It's for me and a bunch of my friends, who grew up watching, it really is a privilege completely for us to talk with you like this. And thanks for, playing Dungeons and Dragons with Mike and I in the beginning there. Thank you very, very much.
Brian Shute, the pride of Hoover. We appreciate you. Bye-bye, Frank.